Today makes it 1 year since the alleged shooting at the Lekki toll gate. This event has been marked by some protests, some movements, and just sober reflection by the Nigerian youth. This will be the background of our today's discussion as we look at the EndSARS protest, the aftermath of the protest against police brutality. I am Augusta Neka, and here with me we have Emeka Ugonye. He is the president, Ecolog Group, founder and CEO for Due Process Advocates International Foundation. Thank you so much for coming, sir.
Thank you.
You know about the protest. What do you think about the EndSARS protest?
Well, yes, there is nobody living in Nigeria or even outside Nigeria at this moment who cannot remember the events of last year, the tragic events of last year, the protest that turned into a riot, which was originally intended to lead to what would have been the most significant reform of the Nigerian police force, but which was hijacked and ultimately led to what we may call an anticlimax. It led to an outcome that was counterproductive and which set back the hands of the clock and worsened the situation that it came to remedy. And that was the 2020 protest against Nigerian police, specifically the EndSARS protest. There are so many ironies when we look at what happened. First and foremost, if you look at the name EndSARS, it will look as if the anger of the public was directed only at a unit of the Nigerian police force known as the SARS, the infamous SARS. And that has actually been the focus. But if we focus on that unit alone, as most people did and still do, you will fail to understand the problem. The problem was not just with a unit of the police force. It couldn't be. That unit of the police force was still under the police force, the police central command, the IGP. They were all answerable to the centralized police structure in Nigeria. So when you single the SARS out, you suggest that other units of the police force or the police force at large was good, and that the only bad element was the SARS unit. And when you funnel your attention in such a manner, the danger is that you will miss the real target. You will miss the real problem. You will focus on a shadow and not on substance. Let me highlight this point. The SARS unit of the police force would never have been if they did not enjoy the coordinating support or complementary support of other units of the police force. For instance, there is in every police command a unit called the legal department that charges people to court, that prosecutes suspects. So when SARS tortured people, they tortured people for the purpose of obtaining first confessionary statements. And those first confessionary statements are intended to be used partly in prosecution of cases. So there is a demand for first confession. And where do you think the demand was coming from? It was coming from the legal department in the police force, and they are not in the SARS unit. When you hear that SARS engaged in extrajudicial executions, yes, Sometimes the instruction to execute people emanated from outside the police, clients of the Nigerian police or clients of the SARS officers who paid money for somebody to be killed. But a whole lot of the time, those clients of SARS don't come straight to SARS. They go to a police commissioner, complain to a police commissioner that they have land dispute with somebody and they wanted the person eliminated. And the police commissioner contacts the people in SARS. And the person gets framed and accused of armed robbery all of a sudden, and the person disappears. So it is a very complex system. The SARS were not alone. And if you understood that the SARS were not alone, you will understand that banning the SARS unit would not solve the problem. In fact, it was one of the biggest gimmickry in history to suggest that the SARS were disbanded. Disbanded to where? Where are the SARS officers? Are they still not in the police force? Are they still not doing whatever they were doing under the same or different names? So it was a mockery. And that was because of the poor organization of the protest, the NSAS protest. I'm going to come to that because it was a very poorly organized, spontaneous reaction of society, which was why it was easy for it to be hijacked, and which was why it was easy for the outcome to become a counterproductive, ineffective, and regrettable outcome. So, but if Nigerians think that anything has changed because the SARS unit was said to be disbanded, it is not true. In fact, the government is no longer even pretending to be doing anything to disband SARS or prevent the atrocities that led to the protest. There's no pretense about it. Let us focus on what the police were doing. It's when we focus on their methodology that we begin to understand it. Because if you focus on the activities of the so-called SARS unit, you can identify other units of the Nigerian police that employ the same methods.
Okay, sir, let us try to take these issues one after the other. We would come to the organization of the SARS protest, of the end SARS protest. We'll also talk about the goals and what has changed in 1 year. But for now, you made serious allegations against the police, talking about their method and their complex system. Can you please expatiate on that?
Yes, I would. You see, since 2016, I had, through my organization, been having a running battle with the Nigerian police. The battle we had was essentially because we tried to intervene in cases of police brutality, in cases of police atrocity. In 2016, we got involved in the investigation of a woman that missed in Abuja. We complained that the policemen were not conducting an effective investigation, that they were more involved in cover-up. The conflict between my organization and the police led to a point when the police decided to silence me. And what they did was to lock me up. They detained me in abattoir. Abattoir is a spot in Abuja, which used to be abattoir as abattoir meant, but it was converted to a detention center for Nigerian police in Abuja. And when I say Nigerian police in Abuja, it meant the Abuja command and the IG's office, the Central Police Unit. That's where they detain people. The abattoir became, in my assessment, a 15 billion annual revenue criminal enterprise run by Nigerian police. They detain more than 1,000 people in that place, sometimes for as long as 3 years. So when I was brought to abattoir, I was shocked. I noticed that these people were running an illegal prison. This was no longer a police cell. It was an industry. 1,000 people at a time, held like a herd, like an animal farm. And I will get to that. I also noticed that there was absolutely no feeding for these people. Many of them were dying at the rate of 5 a week from starvation. For the one weekend that the police held me in abattoir, it was like a discovery for me. The things I saw shocked me. I couldn't believe it. If someone had told me or written about it, I would have said, no, this is an exaggeration. I saw people in abattoirs starving to death. I saw people tortured to death. I saw their poor recording system. Indeed, the first time I came, the first night I was there, they came and said, barrister, somebody has just died. And I came out, I saw a body lying down in the pile of mass humanity. And I asked natural, I said, what's his name? They said they don't know his name. So I said, isn't there a way to know the names of the people? There was no way. Each police commando unit that brought a person, they will have the IPO. The IPO is the only one that knows who he brought there. So a man died, unaccounted for, unknown. They said his IPO would know. When they reached out for the IPO and the IPO found out that the man died, he denied being the one that brought him there. It was terrible. I immediately began to take it, even at great risk to myself. I didn't even realize how risky what I was doing was. I began to write down the names of inmates, people who stayed there 2-3 years. And you know how these people could live. For you to leave abattoir, if you're lucky, you get charged to court. If your family bring money and pay these police officers, they will charge you to court. That is, they will request for a form to go to police, the legal department of whatever command that brought you there. If it's IG command, there is something. If it is the Abuja command, FCT command, there is something. So you have to pay money to be charged to court. People pay money. If you don't pay money, you stay in abattoir indefinitely. So they understood that charging you to court is a way for you to leave detention and for you not to be executed, because once charged to court, you are likely not going to be executed. Charging you to court means accounting for you. A charge will be drawn, your name will enter into the judicial system, so you will leave. If they're going to execute you, you won't be charged to court. But in abattoir, constantly in the evening, they will come and take 2 to 7 people out. They will not come back. Message will trickle in the next day that those people have been executed. So Nigerian policemen were killing. And this was not just SARS thing. It was something known all over. And as you know, SARS was one unit. There are other units. There is the IRT, there is the STS, there is the all manner of things. They carved up Nigerian police force into units of deadly gangs that execute people. Even as I tell you, it's difficult to believe. If I did not witness and see this, it is difficult to believe. So when I left abattoir, I was determined in 2018 to let the world know what I saw. And if I had been allowed to make my case, I wasn't making my case only against SARS because I understood that the problem was beyond one unit of the police. It was the police. So, but I made the mistake of announcing my plan before everything was ready. I revealed that I was going to disclose the atrocities and crimes against humanity being committed by the Nigerian police. Immediately I did it, I became a target by the police. The people most implicated by what I was saying were one Moshood. One Moshood, who was then the public relations officer of the police. Because Moshood was always, as you can understand, the most directly affected whenever the police was in the news, negatively. So this guy is like during the Nazi system, Joe Bell. Joe Bell was the propagandist. Any evil system needs its mouthpiece. It is mouthpiece covered up atrocities. So this Moshood, who was then a deputy commissioner of police, running the PR office of PR Department of Nigerian Police, was the jobber of the time. He was the guy who tried to put a spin on these executions, who tried to deny these executions, who tried to deny these atrocities. So when they made the mistake of placing me in abattoir and making me an eyewitness, it was a big problem for them. So that Moshood was interested in me being silenced. Another person interested in me being silenced was James Idashaba, who was the head of the legal department of the Abuja command. And I argued, and still will argue, that if Nigerian police were charging money to charge people to court, if they were extorting up to 200 to 400,000 naira for a person's case to go to court, then such could not be happening without the knowledge of the legal department of the command. And such could not be happening without the knowledge of the head of the legal department. So because of this line of reasoning, James Idashaba was directly implicated. He was implicated in my theory. If I was allowed to advance this theory, I was basically pointing my finger at his department for what was going on. You must know that when I entered the police detention, I knew there was problem in the police, I knew, but I did not know the magnitude of it. It took me a while to piece these things together when I spoke to people. So that was how these people, that Moshood guy, Idashaba, and Bala Chiroma, who was just newly appointed commissioner of Abuja Command. Bala Chiroma was not directly involved in my theory at that time. He was new, but he was the police commissioner. So the point I'm trying to make is there is a system of evil in the Nigerian police force. This is not an isolated incident. This is not, well, I'm going to say this. Not every police officer is bad. Don't get me wrong. I would like to suggest that at least 1% of the police is good. But what we are witnessing in Nigerian police is a rot too deep. And the chain of causation, what caused what, is far more deep than what we see. So in SARS became the poster boy of the evil in the police force. They were the visible people, but they were not alone. I must emphasize, and because they were not alone, disbanding them will not solve the problem, and it has not solved the problem. It persisted. So what they did, because you asked me about methodology, very simple, very simple. It's all about greed and money and corruption. If the police can come as if they're making money, like hunters going to hunt for animals. They can come and carry out a raid at any spot. If armed robbery occurred here 2 days ago, if somebody was killed here, if a dead body was discovered here 2 days ago, the police could come in this evening and take everybody they see there. Every young man, they will take them first. They begin to extract money. 100,000 will be released. They will eventually reduce it to 50,000. There will be a few people who will not afford it, even if you put it down to 50,000. Those people are now taken to SARS for further processing. And once you come to SARS, they subject you to extraordinary, the most inhumane form of torture. The Nazis, the Gestapos, did not use the kind of torture the Nigerian policemen under SARS used. They do everything. Half the time they will kill you in the course of torturing you. The other half, you'll be so maimed that you'll die a few days after. And those who survived it, many of them were paralyzed. Let me tell you something that will shock you. When I was in abattoir, I noticed some men with this identical pattern of problem. Their right arm was limp. Their right arms could no longer be used. It was dangling. I asked them why. They said during the SARS torture, they would take tube and tie up your arm. Tie up your arm to a point where they cut off circulation. They leave you there. After 30 minutes, that arm is gone. You know, I noticed their right arm, it was a part consistent. You see 10, 5, 15 men with the identical problem. You begin to ask, but then everything made sense. When I saw one man with his left arm limp, I'm so sorry. It was the left arm that was limp in the majority of the cases. The left arm was limp. Then I saw a guy with his right arm limp. I asked why. They explained to me. They paralyze you on one arm, but they spare the arm you will use to sign the first confession. The arm spared. The reason they tie up the left arm was most people are right-handed. Until I saw the guy whose right arm was paralyzed, I was surprised. I then found that the guy was left-handed. It was beyond coincidence. Part of the torture. And why? One thing they used to do, many people did not realize, was they tried to torture you in ways that will not leave obvious marks. Like paralyzing your arm will not leave a mark. People will think you were born that way. Also, when they flog people, they use machete to beat people. It took me a while to figure out why Nigerian policemen will use machete to beat people. I realized that eventually. The blade, the flat part of the machete does not leave marks like being flogged with a whip. However, when the machete is raised against a person, the person has no idea whether the blade will hit him. The fear induced in a person being flogged with a machete is so incredible that he will confess to anything. He will just say, sir, what do you want me to say? How many people do you want me to say I killed? If you say, we want you to say you killed this man, sir, I can say I killed 10 if you want. That is the sort of thing they do. They get it in. The Idashaba type of men, the legal department will take it to court. And then you see the corruption is consistent. And judges knowingly ignore these confessions that
Now,
were in
Barry,
this. It's a problem.
but what you described is an institutional decay that has led to the loss of lives of many Nigerians. Why, in your opinion, have the judicial system ignored this decay and allowed it to continue and persist for so long?
Several reasons. I've asked myself that question so many times. Without a permissive, indulgent judiciary, this will not happen. You see, the legal system is structured in such a way that the process involved going through a number of agencies. The police alone could never have done it if others do their work. If the judiciary does its work, the police will not be able to be this bad. Because all it takes is for you to file papers in court and for the judge to find out that the evidence was, confession was obtained by force and dismiss the case. If the judge does it twice, nobody would think we want to present confessed statement. I mean, forced confessions. So the judiciary had, indeed, it's automatic. One of the judges said that if she sees the word murder, she doesn't want to read to the end of it, the M, she will deny bail. So if she sees armed robbery, she doesn't want to even read beyond the first AR. Why? So it means that if the police want to have you denied bail, they just call it murder. They can even say, the person you killed may not even exist. The judge will not even ask. The judge locks you up. Many people spend 10 years in prison on purely fabricated cases, which could take only 10 minutes to tell that it is fabricated. So why are the judges doing this? Several reasons. The judges are corrupt, just like the police. Many of them are so corrupt. And because of their involvement in corruption, they have so much to hide. They have so much skeleton in their cupboard. And if a judge is decadent, that judge would not like to offend the police. He plays along with them. That's how they work. That's how he maintains himself. Several judges are incompetent. Several judges are appointed through corrupt processes. You are appointed a judge because you're a girlfriend of a governor, or a relative of a governor, or a relative of another judge. Not because you are intelligent, not because you are upright, not because you are hardworking. And when you end up in the judiciary, what are you going to have? You're going to have a corrupt system. So I want to make it clear for Nigerians to understand. The police will not be half as bad as they are if our judges were even 10% as good as they ought to be, as good as these teachers were designed to be. Now, you also have judges who are intimidated, who are afraid for their own lives. Look at this judge. In a state of insecurity in Nigeria, a judge is guarded by the police, his guard, armed guard, is a police officer. His house is guarded by the policeman. The last thing a judge wants to do is to annoy the same police commissioner that sends him those policemen. Your life is at the mercy of this police commissioner. He sends policemen to guard you. What if one of them kills you at night? Or what if they refuse to guard you? So, no judge would like to offend the police commissioner. We have seen that again and again and again. And I began to even think, really, that Nigeria is supposed to have a special force that protects the judiciary. Because the regular police cannot protect the judiciary and then expect the judiciary to rein in their abuses. It's not possible. So the failure in the judiciary is a compounding of these factors: incompetence, corruption, ineptitude, and fear. The fear factor. No policeman, no judge wants to offend the police commissioner in his state. You can't do that. If you do, you could die. That is the real. I asked these questions so many times. No Nigerian judge can deal with these guys. They're out of hand. Let me tell you something too. Even the IG himself is afraid of his men. Of course. Now, why do we have such people in the police? That's a different reason, and I'm going to explain that when we get there. Why do we end up with so many bad guys in the police system? Because it's one thing to have a very horrible institution incapable of regulating these people, and then to have consistently very dangerous men in the police force. When I said several times that the Nigerian police is the worst criminal gang in Nigeria, I knew how profound that statement was. I did not make it lightly. And I knew the risk I took in making that statement. But you got to see the Nigerian police as a crime gang. At any point in time, no major crime occurs in Nigeria. No major pattern of crime can occur in Nigeria without the involvement of the police. It's impossible. How do the criminals get guns? How do they? It's incredible. There was one case before I end. In one of the cases in Abuja, a SARS officer, now retired, he would arrest people. His whole goal is not to catch criminals, it's to catch people who pay bribe to be set free. That is the whole goal. Grab people. When they catch you, if they say, hey, we've arrested you for wandering, or if they say we arrested you for trespass, that's not a serious offense. You won't pay bribe for that. So if they arrested you for any reason, it has to be something that will justify payment of bribe. Armed robbery. And they won't just say that, they will torture you until you confess. When you confess, then you call your family. And your father says, what has my son done? If you tell him your son was caught in trespassing, he will not be interested in paying bribe because it's a small offense. So you say, no, your son was caught in armed robbery. The man will say, my son, oh no, impossible. He would never do that. They will show your father the confession you signed. Remember, you're in detention. Your father is not talking to you, he's just talking to the office policeman. They show your father the confession where you confess to being a gang member, an armed robbery gang member. Your father panics. He says to the officer, what shall we do? What can we do? And the officer will say, well, bring money. Bring money. So you don't have money, you sell land. These guys participate even in selling of land. Do you know that when SARS arrested anybody for armed robbery, anything, they would take a truck to the person's house and remove everything in his house. Steal your plates, your light bulb. At Abattoir Detention Center, people, inmates, they will say to me, barrister, that is my IPO. That shirt he's wearing is my shirt. That shoe is my shoe. So nobody ever looked into that. That was sufficient motive to arrest a person. If you have a car, if you are living, well, or they think you've got money, they will steal that money. So stealing your property became a reason in itself for the police to arrest you. They're just armed robbers. They want to steal your car. They want to steal your property. They arrest you, call you an armed robber, detain you, go to your house and take your things. And that also now leads to the motive to eliminate you. Because if they release you, you will go home and complain. So it's a very terrible thing. I don't know where to begin. I'm, these things are going through my mind. I interviewed more than 1,000 victims of SARS. I documented their cases. This is not a joke. I had the opportunity, very unique opportunity, to document the experiences of these people, and it could shake the world.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we'll have to schedule another interview just for you to talk about police brutality and the way you've experienced it. But let's go back to the topic of the day, the aftermath of the EndSARS protest. In your opinion, in the course of this 1 year, have anything changed to justify that protest?
No. On the contrary, the police are now emboldened by some understanding that, well, you've done your worst and you couldn't do anything more. The same abuses exist. However, there are subtle events in Nigeria that we must take into consideration. The recent escalation in broader violence, like the ESN, the unknown gunmen, had in some way impacted the police and their ability to work. So there is some level of perception and fear in the police force today of counter sources of violence. They don't seem to have monopoly of violence as they used to have, which is unfortunate because it is our desire, it is the hope of Nigerians to have police force that can actually contain criminals and suppress crime. So when you have a situation where the police have become targets of organized crimes, like people attacking police stations, bombing police stations and killing police, it's a tragedy for us. And this is what I have tried to explain to Nigerians. They thought, some people think that because of my experience with the police, I'm angry with the police, or no. On the contrary, I appreciate the importance of the police. We need the police in this country. And in the work of DPA, we actually need the police more than many people realize. For instance, if a man beats up his wife and the wife comes to DPA, it is the police we need to stop that domestic violence. If there is injustice anywhere, or oppression or aggression, it is the police we need. If a landlord evicts a tenant unlawfully, it is the police we need. So DPA needs the police. I need the police. I want a well-functioning police force in Nigeria. We had a case recently where a person abducted a child contrary to law and went somewhere. We went to NAPTIP and told NAPTIP, we know where the child is. It's in Oshodi. Come help. Let's get the police and arrest them. They told us no, that the police are afraid of going to that place. They could be attacked. We were shocked. I've never felt as helpless as I felt that day because the police were incapable. So have things changed? Not much. If we are focusing on police atrocities and abuses, not much has changed. But in terms of the willingness of the police to suppress protests, yes, the police is now more alert to make sure that protests will never happen again. Even basic rights to assemble have been undermined. They realized how inflammable the situation is, how combustible the situation is. The angst against the police is so intense. The public outrage against the Nigerian police is so intense. It is higher now than ever before. So given any opportunity, the people will lash against the police. Because the police are aware of that, they are now determined to suppress any attempt to gather or converge or create any awareness that might trigger protest. So these are issues, big problems in the country. As I said, and by the way, something else you must understand is, probably I should have clarified this. The conditions of service of the average Nigerian police officer is about the worst in the world. It is a miracle that you will give a man such a poor condition of life as they give Nigerian police, and then at the same time give the man a gun. Honestly, sometimes if you look at it, you may say it's a miracle that Nigerian policemen are not just full-blown criminals robbing everybody. How can a man survive on a salary of 27,000 a month if you want him to obey the law? No man who has a family can obey the law and still survive on 27,000 a month. So the Nigerian police structure and setup is designed to fail. It is designed to produce angry men who will turn against the law instead of protecting the law. Policemen pay for their uniform. They buy their own shoes. They buy the pen with which they write your statement. They fuel the car. The stationery with which they take witness statement, the police officer buys it. He has his own. His neighbor officer has his own. So how do you expect that officer to respond to a complaint without asking for money?
Okay, we'll talk about police system, police methodology, and police brutality another day. But let's stick to the topic of today. What is your take on the anniversary protest that was held today in major cities?
Well, it was necessary for this adversary. Well, it's not really a protest. I don't see any protest in that sense. The police had made it clear to everybody that they would not allow protests. But as I said also, the country is embroiled in all forms of tension. There's tension everywhere in this country. So a whole lot of people have this ambivalent attitude towards the issue. Yes, people remembered the protest, but there was nothing that happened today that could be compared to what happened last year. It was necessary for people to remember it because it sends a message to the police and to the government that this issue is not yet rested, that this force that pushed people into extreme reactions last year are still there. It is supposed to send a message to the government because apparently the government had slackened down in their desire to carry out reform. Last year, at the beginning of the protest, the government was willing to give concessions to make reform a priority. But the manner in which the protest was suppressed gave the government the impression that perhaps there was no need to do much. The remembrance of the event, this anniversary, sends a message to the government that probably it's not right to become complacent. It's not right to assume that the problem is over. The problem is still there. So I think it's a wonderful thing that the people expressed their feelings about the Nigerian police force. And if the new leadership of the force, is rightly sensitive to these things, I will expect them to continue the reform. Reform is necessary because not much has happened. Even though, unfortunately, the Nigerian police have been on the receiving end of violence and problems and tension. And sometimes, I must say, my heart goes out to these officers. We need policemen, despite the fact that I continue to complain about the bad eggs in the police. We need policemen in this country. That is a critical institution that is lacking today. And the protest was correct. It will continue, I believe, next year and subsequent years. Nigerians will not forget what happened. And I hope it sends a message to the complacent government that these things are not yet over. Wake up, guys. I would say, if I were to see the president and talk to him, I would say, Mr. President, you ain't seen nothing yet. Get serious with this police reform. Get serious with this. These people are not done yet. You might have pushed them back. They're not done yet. This country is going to burn someday. And it's going to burn on the basis of atrocities of the police. The police is going to become the symbol of people's anger in the near future, unless more is done. So the anniversary was a reminder to all of us and to government.
Now, recently, the House of Representatives minority leader raised a motion talking about, or rather trying to mandate the Senate Committee on Police Affairs to investigate the issues raised by the NSAS protest. But the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives argued against this, saying that that was not a protest, rather it was an unruly riot that threatened the affairs of the state. And that motion was voted against 3 times in the House, and it had to die. What is your opinion on this?
Well, it just reflects the nature of the problems, as I indicated. The wealthy people in Nigeria, the highly connected people in Nigeria, do not seem to suffer yet. I use the word yet because they will eventually get to them. They don't seem to suffer the problem of the police abuse. They don't seem to suffer it as much as others. They do suffer it. Remember, the same Moshood and some policemen did everything to implicate the former Senate president. Did everything to implicate him in a murder. The same people. So you are never too big to suffer it. You may suffer it, but generally, the rich men, the connected men, they travel with police escort. And if you travel with police escort, then you will not be a victim of extortion, police extortion. No. When the policemen stood by the road and you drove by with police escort, they will hail you. So the majority of the House might not understand and identify with the people of Nigeria today because they are in the privileged pool of people who enjoy protection. But also, I must point out, giving politics for what it was, once these things came up from a minority party, it will be given political interpretation. It will be given as an attempt to condemn their government or their party in power. But it's very important for them. I think it's a terrible short-sightedness for the members of the legislature not to understand what happened, not to understand the need to look into what happened in order to avoid a repeat. And my fear is that the next time around, it could be far more devastating, really. It could be more difficult. So it is, they lost an opportunity there. Members of the House of Representatives, the majority, they lost an opportunity to take the bull by the horn. They lost an opportunity of leadership, showing leadership, and they exposed Nigeria to another round of crisis and tension. Maybe not now, maybe not next year, but inevitably it will happen.
Okay, remember that you can join this conversation simply by raising up your digital hand. And I'll try to accommodate as much questions and comments as possible. Looking at the federal government's reaction towards the NSAS protest, do you think it was a strategic move to push back the protesters in the manner they did That was talking about last year, 20th of October 2020 protest.
No, I think it was a big blunder. If anybody was advising Nigerian government at that time, it was an excellent opportunity to carry out a massive reform. If the president had come, because you see, one of the problems in reforming the Nigerian police is the resistance from within the police. Anything you want to change in the police, the top officers would not allow that. They will not allow anything that will alter their privileges. They will not allow anything that will change the ways they make money. So the problem the president had was the resistance from within the system. The protest offered the president a golden opportunity to drive a trailer through the police structure. Indeed, the president could have done anything he wanted without any iota of resistance from the police, because he could say, hey, look at the problem. Look at the problem in the streets. Look at what we've got here. I have no choice but to do something. The president could have done it. But unfortunately, the president lost that opportunity. And they thought that they had solved the problem. No. The true sources and causes of these problems were left intact. So in terms of the strategic choices the government made, it was a complete blunder. There was nothing strategic about the measures the government took. It was the blunder, the worst of blunders, because in the end, the struggle was in vain. The riot was in vain. The agitation was in vain. Nothing was achieved. We just ended it and prepared to relaunch it. That's what this is. Nigeria is now. Nigeria is going to have another combustion. And let me tell you something. Resistance occurs in many ways. The resistance against Nigerian police may not necessarily come in terms of, the next one may not necessarily come in terms of street protest. The ransacking police stations, killing police officers, burning down police stations, freeing prisons, that could be a form of protest, a violent and unlawful form of responding to a social crisis. We need to reform the police, train the police, equip the police. This sort of police officers, I will feel like in the United States, when the police, yes, I understand there are problems about the police and the black people in the United States, but let me tell you something from personal experience. In the state of Maryland, where I live, when you see a police officer, if you get them, you feel a sigh of relief. Your car could be stuck in the snow, and you are wondering what you're going to do. And a police officer comes. You say, oh God, thank you. Thank you. Because the police officer is going to assist you. If you're not a criminal, you have no problem worrying about the police. If you have no record, your driver's license is accurate, your car registration is accurate, you have nothing. Police officer is a savior. That is why in America, if you ask every child of 4 to 6 years old, what would you be when you grow up? He will say firefighter or police officer. But in Nigeria, if you ask a child, what will you be if you grow up and he says a police officer, even his parents, who is a police officer, will rebuke him. That's how bad it is. So we need a police force in Nigeria such that when a police officer approaches you, you will thank God. We need to do it. If we don't do it, we won't have a country. No country can survive without police. So when you say the strategic analysis or strategic implication of the government choices, it's a blunder, complete blunder. And that is why the Nigerian police continue to suffer disrepute. Nobody, to tell you the truth, I just don't know how a Nigerian police officer can go home and sleep at night. Do you know why? Nobody wants to be a police officer. Nobody wants a child to be a police officer in Nigeria. I can tell you that. Because they are abused, they are scorned, they are disrespected. And when the people disrespect the police, how can the police function? So the riot of last year was a golden moment for the government of Nigeria to finally give us a police force that we'll be proud of. They lost that opportunity. They're still losing that opportunity. They still don't realize what happened. So that is the tragedy of last year. The tragedy of it was that nothing resulted from it. We didn't learn a lesson from it. The country failed to learn a lesson. The country failed to carry out necessary reforms that would have been justified under the circumstances. Indeed, we are worse off. And that is so sad. I feel very terrible about these things. And I feel personally terrible about these things because I have come very close to the Nigerian police and I saw the level of problems there, and I saw the need for reform, and I saw how the government has repeatedly squandered the various opportunities for reform. I consider it a tragedy, and I feel so terrible about it.
Okay, let us listen to Emeka Oraituka. Emeka, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for your brilliant submission, Barrister Emeka Ogwuanyi, my namesake.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, I erroneously sent you a link yesterday, and two links yesterday. I thought the program was going to take place yesterday, but you put me right in the right perspective. I'm very grateful. Yeah, I don't know whether you had you perused the link I sent.
Yes, I did. I did, and they were very enlightening. Actually, I thought it was very thoughtful of you to draw my attention to them.
Very good. The first link was the press briefing I did on the way forward after NSAS protest.
Yes.
Yeah, you've said everything that needed to be said here. You understand? I may just add small thing to what you just said. After the NSAS protest, the president challenged Nigerians to come up with ideas on how police reform can be effected. I don't know whether you have itemized how the reform should be. You see, we keep calling on government to do reform, and what have you. There must be input from the civil society too. I'm not saying civil society organization. People like you, brilliant minds like you. I don't know whether you itemized any.
Hello.
Thing.
I think we lost him.
Nah, that's a part.
Okay, he's back.
Emeka Oraka, we are listening to you. All right, I think I can answer the question. I think I can answer the question he was on, if you don't mind. He asked if, yes, he is very right. Emeka is absolutely right. It is one thing to stay outside and criticize government. It's another thing to take steps to make sure you convey your mind, your thoughts to government. And Emeka, I will actually surprise you by saying this. When this protest was occurring last year, I was in prison, in detention, on a trump-up charge by Nigerian police. I was in prison. When it started happening, I shook my head because I knew it was going to happen. I actually tried to prevent it in 2018 by trying to draw attention to the crisis in the Nigerian police. In order to suppress my voice, I was framed up and I was detained. But within the period of the time I spent in prison, I ensured that several petitions were sent to the government. Let me tell you the people I sent petitions to. Petition to the President of Nigeria, to the Vice President of Nigeria, to the President of the Senate, to the Speaker of House of Representatives, to the Chief Justice of Nigeria and to the IGP. I detailed out, you will never believe that this could be engineered by someone in prison. But I spent my time detailing out the problems of the police, and I was basing my petition on the basis of my observation in prison. Because in prison, I interviewed inmates, all those people with limbs, numb limbs. Remember, some of them ended up in prison. I had to document, interview, put name and date behind torture cases. And based on that, I did a petition. One of my petitions that had effect was the one sent to the Chief Judge of Abuja. I told him that people were in abattoir, the police detention for up to 3 years. I reminded the Chief Judge that Section 34 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act mandated the Chief Judge to ensure that the magistrate would visit every police cell at least once a month to ascertain the conditions of people in detention, why they're in detention, and how long have been in detention, to make sure that there's nobody there detained unduly. My protest letter, my petition, contained the decadence, the atrocities of the police, how they commit the atrocities, how they obtain confessions illegally. And I even tried to shock the conscience of the Chief Justice and the Chief Judge by telling them that more than 50% of the people awaiting trial in prison had nothing to do with the offenses they were charged with. Based on that petition, the Chief Judge went to visit abattoir. He announced when he was coming, and the day he came, the police carefully removed the inmates. Remove them. This is how clever they are. When they know that the Chief Judge or anybody was coming, anybody important, they will pack the inmates in the morning in trucks and hide them somewhere that nobody will see them in abattoir. They will leave a few inmates, those arrested the night before. So when the visitor would come and see, you will see few inmates, and all of them recently arrested. Everything looked normal. And when he goes, they will go and bring back these people in the same evening. So the Chief Judge announced he was coming and came. But he didn't see the people he expected to see. The people that DPA described in our petition. We even attached pictures. They didn't know that we had pictures of abattoir. We attached pictures in the petition that was given to the Chief Judge. So the Chief Judge did not find what he expected to find. So he became aggressive in questioning one of the inmates. And when that one said, admitted that people were moved out, that the inmates were moved out of the main detention hall, the Chief Judge left in anger. And the following week, he came unannounced with about 25 judges. Came unannounced by 8 a.m. The policemen, some of them had not even reported to duty when they were called and told the Chief Judge. Do you know, could you believe that the police refused to open the gate for the Chief Judge? That's to tell you the level of impunity. They refused to open the gate. The Chief Judge had to insist before he was finally allowed in. The Chief Judge came in there and saw the inmates. People reported that some of the judges wept when they saw the horrible condition in abattoir. And there and then, that same day, the Chief Judge turned abattoir into a court and began to process cases. Ordered for 600 inmates were moved that night to prison, because abattoir is not a place to detain people. So, because abattoir is not a prison, Nigerian policemen are not trained to run a prison. That is why they put people in abattoir, whether you have HIV or tuberculosis, they pile you there. There is no medical personnel. Abattoir is a secret dungeon. So there is no way to process inmates, even to document them. But if you go to prison, at least you'll be tested. If you have any illness, it will be identified. And you'll be segregated or separated from all the inmate population. So, but the judges, people who described what happened, said that the judges wept what they saw. So 600 were moved that night to abattoir. There was happiness everywhere. Even in the prison, people were happy because they said, they met me in prison, they said, "Barrister, thank you. We knew your petition did it. We knew your petition did it." So now let me tell you the tragic thing. That night, I have the name documented. There was one inmate they brought there in a horrible state, dying state. The officer in charge of the prison refused to take him. He said, "We can't take this person. This is a corpse. This is a dead body. Take him to hospital." Because the guy was so sick and vomiting and throwing up on himself. So do you know, that person was rejected by the prison. The police took him back. We thought that everyone thought that the police were taking him to the prison hospital. The next day, the police brought him together with the next batch. The only difference was that they bought a new shirt and placed on him. So the prison did not realize it was the same man. He died the next day in prison. These things are documented. We have it. DPA has it. So my petition did go. They ignored it. The president did not act. Well, I wouldn't know if he acted by referring to someone else, but there was no indication that the president of Nigeria or his office responded to my petition. But I have a copy indicating it was endorsed. He knew, he saw it, because his office saw it. It bore the stamp of the office of the president. The same with the vice president. Indeed, I even sent a copy to the committee, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Human Rights and Judiciary, Bamidele. I knew Bamidele because we were in News.Band together. So I was happy writing, thinking that when he saw my name, he will respond to it. But Bamidele, I thought so. He saw it, he did nothing. These guys don't care about nothing. Nigerian senators and these lawmakers, they don't care about nothing at all. So they saw my petition. That will not move them. But when there was riot, I thought my petition was nothing. Now there is a reason to act. Unfortunately, they failed to act.
Now, if the protest did not work, and you saw how the magnitude of the protest, if that did not work, if that could not motivate the government to act and reform the police, what then can we do?
That is a big challenge. Because honestly, if Nigerian government can afford to turn its back and show such insensitivity to the protest, it really suggests that nothing can move this government. Nothing. All right, perhaps the current state of things in the Southeast, the violence we are witnessing today, the so-called government, the attack on the police, it's even possible that our government does not see a link. They don't see a link between what is going on there and the general state of breakdown of law and order in the country. If we have an effective police force, this will not happen. They don't see it as another form of the people, the society, reacting to the symbol of oppression. When I mean symbol of oppression, that's what the police say. The police are. A lot of people are oppressing people. The judiciary are involved. I just showed you that our senators and lawmakers are uselessly involved. They are indifferent. Their silence and indifference is encouraging this. The politicians are corrupt. The senators are there not caring about their constituents. They're stealing and sharing money. So everybody is frustrated. It's not just the police that is the problem, but the police is the symbol. The police is the visible arm of the state. The police is what people see when they have a problem with the state. So for them, the police is the state. So, and that is why they attacked. So what will happen? I don't know, but there is something that is obvious. There is a continuous decline, the continuous worsening of law and order. And when law and order, state law and order worsens, it starts from small theft to small assaults here and there, to brigandage here and there, to situations where the police institutions, police formations are being ransacked by government. So what is going to happen? When will the government realize? I think that ultimately this decline will get to a point where it threatens government. It threatens these lawmakers. When these gunmen or the kidnappers or who they are begin to kidnap the senators and their families, somebody's going to wake up and realize, by the way, let me tell you something. The senators in the Southeast, normally, if you were going to the East, you just get a few policemen. They will make sure you're not extorted and stopped by police on the road, and you can intimidate a few people. But the activities of the government in the East are such that many people feel safer if they don't go with police escort. If you go with police escort, you're making yourself a target. So now it is a point of infraction. People are now feeling probably we don't have this protection we thought we had by bribing policemen, buying a few of them to follow me around. Maybe they're going to come to say, hey, we need something more serious. For us to have safety in this country, we're going to have safety for everybody. Safety for me alone in my Land Cruiser, escorted by policemen in hillocks behind and in front. That's not enough, because when the gunmen come, your policemen are shooting at targets. So perhaps something that strategic is going to happen. Perhaps I mean, we are seeing other things. There might be reforms or what you call restructuring. I'm sure if there's ever a restructuring discussion in this country, the fate of the Nigerian police will be discussed. And also, as you can see, there's mounting agitation for regional protective forces, regional police. That's why you have Amoteku in the West, which is a sign that the Central Police Command had failed. And you have the Bubagu in the East, and you're going to have similar fashions in other parts of the country. At some point, I believe, somebody in the presidency, because I can tell you that none of these changes can occur without political will in the presidency. As I indicated before I go, let me point this out. Reforming the Nigerian police is so hard because of the connection of Nigerian police with elections. You need the police to rig elections. You need the police to win elections. So president, vice president, everybody is scared. You don't want to push too hard against the police. That is why I said it was so unfortunate that President Buhari lost the opportunity he had in 2020. It was a brilliant opportunity. You just won a re-election in 2019. Election is still far off. So you can hack and deal with the police now, and by 2023, they would have forgotten. And now God gave you a wonderful opportunity of a massive protest and outrage against Nigerian police. That would have been a perfect time to fire everybody in the police force. That's up to the rank of a police commissioner. Fire all of them, retrain the rest, conduct basic procedures in the police, check against the use of drugs in the police, check against mental health condition in the police, subject every police officer to psychological evaluation, determine those who can handle gun and those who cannot handle gun. None of these things happen. I was telling you about one SARS officer. I didn't finish the story. It's very funny but nasty. After arresting people, he would torture them. If they are still resisting that they were innocent, he would take them into a dark room in his office. And in that dark room, he has a human skeleton. And he would beat them and say, confess to Baba, confess to Baba, confess to Baba. And can you imagine an inmate, a suspect picked up, rough-handled, beaten, and you take him into a room and you stand him before a skeleton? Most of the average Nigerians are superstitious. So when you show him a skeleton, he'll imagine himself surrounded by evil spirit. So then you say, confess to Baba. Now, this is happening in the police force. Nobody noticed it. Nobody did anything about it. They thought it was fun. Apparently, that police officer is mad. But he was never subjected to any psychological evaluation or mental health checks. You put him there. Let me tell you something. Psychopaths are people who, because of mental health condition, derive pleasure in killing somebody. They like to kill human beings. If you're a psychopath in Nigeria, where would you like to work? Police force. If you are sick in Nigeria and you like killing people, where would you like to work? Police force. Why? Because the police force will protect you. If you are an armed robber in Nigeria, where would you like to work? The police force. Because there's nothing in the recruitment process, in the promotion process, that will detect and isolate you being an armed robber. The system is there. In fact, do you know that to get a job in Nigerian police, you pay bribe? You pay bribe. Now, I will tell you this and I will stop because this will exemplify. When I was in prison, in detention, some boys in the prison created a Facebook account using the picture of a DIG, a lady DIG from Anambra State. They used her picture to create a Facebook account, her picture and name. And immediately it went on. Many police officers began to request for friendship from her account, and she will accept. Okay, the person posing like I will accept. And they will say, oh, auntie, madam, please help me. I'm a police officer. I need a transfer. I need promotion. I need recruitment. And that person posing to be the lady will say, okay, we will help you. Contact so and so person. When the police officer will contact somebody, and that person will tell him to pay money into a particular account for his transfer between 300,000, 400,000. Nigerian police, thousands of Nigerian police officers fell for this trick, and it was carried out by an inmate in prison. They thought that they were speaking to DIG, and all of them were willing to pay bribe for transfer or promotion. That is the police force. That is the Nigerian police force. And these inmates were making a lot of money. It was fun. They were celebrating. Inmates in prison, they call it the sweet revenge. Police officers, oh, auntie, how are you, auntie? And the lady would, the person pretending to be, say, oh, how are you? What can I do for you? Auntie, please, I have not been promoted for the past 6 years. I need my promotion. Say, very well, contact this person. She'll give you a number. And when you call that person, and that person will answer, that's another inmate. Another inmate will answer and say, oh yeah, we're going to help you. Transfer money to you pay. These policemen were paid 200,000, 300,000 to inmates, expecting they were going to get transfer and promotion. Nobody, no police officer even questioned that. No police officer even thought, oh, come on, I'm not going to pay for promotion. I'm not going to pay for transfer. So when you pay bribe for promotion, what are you going to do when you get to the new rank? So it's understood that you're going to extort money, you're going to steal money, you're going to engage in corruption. Otherwise, to get a job in Nigerian police, what they charge you to pay is equivalent to 1 or 2 years' salary. Your first first 2 years salary may not be up to what you are required to pay to get into the police force. Now tell me, how can any reasonable person, any honest person be in such a system? That is what we have. That is what has to change. And that change must come from the presidency. He is the man with the power. He is the man to call the IG and say, hey, if I don't see X, Y, Z, you are fired. Only the president can do that. Only the president can control the IG. The president doesn't do that because the president and his party will need the police in the next round of election to make sure that their opponents don't rig. Let's just say it that way. They want to make sure their opponents don't rig. That's why they need the police. And that's why they're hostage to the police. The police hold them hostage. No reform is coming yet.
Thank you so much. We have been speaking to the president of Equilog Group, founder and CEO of the Due Process Advocates International Foundation, Barrister Emeka Ogwunye. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And we have been talking about the NSAS protest, the aftermath of the protest against police brutality. And I would like to appeal to everybody here currently to please wait 5 minutes while I